We call to order the Board of Education work session September 13th, 2021 here at the central office. And I'd like to call to order. And also on item number 2, I'd like to get a motion to approve the meeting agenda.
I'd like to offer a motion that we approve the meeting agenda, please.
I'd like to second that, please.
It has been moved and seconded to approve this meeting agenda. Thank you so very much for that. Item number 3, Head Start Memorandum of Understanding, and we do have possible action and a vote on it tonight. Dr. McDonald?
Yep, thank you. So each year we have a memorandum of understanding with Head Start, and it's actually just in law. So per law, Head Start has to fill their seats before we can fill our seats in our preschool. So we do work with them on recruitment, and it's a joint effort. And so this is every year. There's not any difference in our MOU from last year. And the reason it is on the board for possible action, normally you'll just see it under consent each year, but we received the MOU late this year. So if you'll notice on the day, we just received it last week, and we need it to bring back in by the 15th.
So if you don't mind, just for our audience, would you just explain MOA?
Oh, yeah, so either MOA would be Memorandum of Agreement, and this is an actual MOU, which is Memorandum of Understanding. It's basically just different language for contract. So under a contract, you usually have an exchange of money, and under a MOA or MOU, it's just a contract that doesn't have any financials attached to it.
Thank you very much. I just thought, when you see here
good
MOU and
idea.
MOA, it can be a little bit.
Absolutely.
But I'd like to offer a motion at the time that we would approve and accept the MOU for the Head Start memorandum.
We have a motion to approve the Head Start Memorandum of Understanding. Do I get a second?
I'll second that.
It has been moved and seconded. I'd like to vote on that. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposes? There are none. Okay, approved. Okay. Travel and exhibition, African American children, Israeli literature. Possible action on that, Dr. McDonald?
So yes, this is, Jane Dewey has brought this to the board, and so this is just a traveling art exhibition, and the artwork will be mailed to the school, and it will be on display. I believe it's at Tolliver, it's just a memorandum of understanding of how we would package and ship the artwork and so forth. All it'll cost the district is shipping, which I think is $75, and Ms. Dewey has that in her budget. So again, this is similar. This is just an understanding or an agreement with the, I believe it's the University of Miami, so that we can have that artwork here at Tolliver.
Awesome.
So we need to vote on that?
Yes, and that's also a time sensitive. Even though the exhibition is a couple of months away, they really do need time to get everything in place for shipping of the artwork and then that sort of thing.
Gotcha.
I will entertain a motion to approve this traveling exhibition.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the traveling exhibition.
Second.
It has been moved and second. Do I give, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposes? There are none. We'll move on then.
The next item is ACT testing for sophomores. So each year we do AC testing for our sophomores. The state pays for all juniors to take the test, and the district has for quite a few years, ever since I've been here, I'm not sure how far back that dates, we have paid for our sophomores to take the test.
It's actually, if I can?
Yes, yeah.
It's actually in law that we test sophomores and juniors, but the state only funds juniors. So that was when we decided to start paying for it.
Yeah.
So you're saying it's a unfunded mandate,
Exactly.
basically.
Correct.
So with that being said, question. Since we started that, I know we've been doing it for at least a little while. Would you say we reaped any benefits from getting our sophomores tested and acclimated to the testing setup?
Oh, I would think so, definitely. Because I had a conversation with a student at the high school the other day who was filling out a dual credit application for dual credit English and math classes and only had the one ACT score. And they were, he's in dual credit, but you need to take it again. And we didn't get to test sophomores, not last school year, but this COVID year. Yeah, the first COVID year.
Yes.
So he only had the one junior score, and so they automatically get 2 free if we test them sophomore and junior year, and then that, I feel like that definitely acclimates them to it, with the ability to take it more if they pay for it, or if they're free and reduced lunch, they get a fee waiver. And last year, we were able to test everybody with the online test, if you remember, so that acclimated them to that, just the different format of it.
I think most parents will say that if they've had a child, a high school student, that usually scores go up the second time you take it. Not always, but pretty much the majority of time student scores go up. So I do think that it helps our students, you know, with their scores.
And they also know what they're looking for.
Exactly.
And a lot of
And we-
schools are also doing this thing where you can keep the scores that are high and then like the highest score and then add to that every time.
Absolutely,
So the more you
yes.
take it, the better you.
Well, and it helps in the super scoring for admissions too, where they'll take the
The
English.
sub-scores.
Yeah, subscores. We also have had several parents, I would say, in the past, if they've missed that sophomore or junior date, they want to figure out a time they can take it that we will pay for it, if they can't take it.
Do we allow, make that accommodation?
We have in the past.
Okay.
I think it was at Danville High School, we paid for sophomores to take it, but we didn't give them a date to take it on. They had to,
They figured out their schedule to come in.
yes.
I
And they
think,
signed
I
up,
believe that's
they
correct.
signed up for one of the national dates and we reimbursed them for the cost with the receipt.
Okay. Okay.
And, oh yes, and so technically, we do not have to have board approval for this. The cost is well under the threshold for needing board approval, but we just like to bring it to the board, to let you see it and be aware that, you know, that we are doing that. And even though it's below the threshold, it's still you know, approximately $6,300. And the reason we're not able to give an exact amount is we don't know the
How many
exact
number?
number of
Right,
students, so
understand.
yes. So, but
Gotcha.
we would ask to go ahead and put it on the consent agenda so that you could, even though it's not required, make a motion on it next week.
Absolutely.
You gonna do that rather than vote tonight?
Yeah, I didn't put possible action by it
Right.
tonight, and so we can hold
We
off
can
till
just put it in
Monday.
consent for next.
Consent agenda, okay.
We're improving it rather early in the school year. Last year we didn't
I was
test
gonna say, we don't
sophomores
test
until
until
April.
Yeah,
April or March.
Okay.
there's usually a discount if we purchase early in the fall, and so we do bring it to you this early so that we can get the discounted price.
Okay.
I can tell you what that was in the past. The past 2 years, the discounted price has been $35 a student, which the ACT rate right now is somewhere around 65-ish.
That's pretty
So
good.
that's rather,
Okay. So this is just an FYI.
Yes.
Okay, all right then, very good. Item number 7, culture gap for continuous improvement.
oh,
I was
we
gonna
skipped
go
number
number
six.
6.
Oh, wait a minute, number 6. Oh, forgot about that. Proposal for additional funding for extracurricular activities.
I'm pulling 6 up, and you're gonna. So we had a discussion at the board meeting last month, and in the middle call. So let me kind of explain the chart. But in the proposal, I'd asked for $20,000 due to loss of ticket sales for athletics and loss of concession sales at athletic events for band, which totaled $20,000. I based that on an estimated ticket loss and concession loss, because we wouldn't have the exact amount, from the prior year, FY20, for COVID. And so that was approximately a 35% increase over what we estimated they lost, because we estimated that the band lost around $3,000 and the athletics lost $12,000. And so I proposed $4,000 and $16,000. And so through the conversation with the board, there were some different amounts that were thrown out to increase that. And I do agree, COVID it's been hard on everyone, and so I think that we can, handle a little bit more out of our budget, and so I wanted to definitely make sure that we were being fair across all groups, and one of the conversations was that students may not have been able to fundraise the same amount that they had fundraised prior to COVID. So I got with each bookkeeper in each school, and please keep in mind that this is school accounts. This is not if there was a booster club that may have contributed other funds. These are just our school accounts, and so I got with each bookkeeper, and they pulled all of the fundraisers from clubs, organizations, or athletic group for FY19 and FY20. And so that's where you see this top, that's the high school. And those are the clubs, groups, and then athletics as a whole, and then went down through there. And that's how much they had fundraised prior to COVID. And so I pulled FY 19 and 20, and I took the higher of the 2 years because some of those groups did their fundraising during the 19-20 school year before COVID, and they still, were about at their same amount. So that represents the largest amount that they did through fundraising for either 19 or 20, depending on that school year. And so I originally had proposed the 35% estimated over their estimated loss. And so, since we had several numbers thrown out there, I went ahead and estimated 75% over. And you can see those numbers and where they land. And that totals $45,520 for the high school. And so that's going to be more than those students have seen in those particular clubs or groups pre-COVID. So that's a fairly good amount. And then Bay, Tolliver, and Hogshead, even though they've not fundraised, the schools themselves have given funds to their groups to buy supplies or those sorts of things. And so, and that is a number that I didn't base on anything necessarily, but I thought it would be good for those, especially like their academic clubs and so forth. And then Tolliver, they have some small clubs. They have a Rubik's Cube club and several others. So I thought the principals working with the club sponsors could, at their discretion, use that for supply money, and maybe they could do some extra activities, which I think is good for our students. Since we're in COVID and there's so many things going on, any extra activities or things that they can do, I think is good for the students. So and that's the reason I separated the chart. The top is based on actual numbers with, you can see the percentage increase, and the bottom is, let's just not forget these smaller groups that normally the school just picks up some stuff. So that's my proposal and kind of where I got the numbers based on our conversation from the last board meeting.
Any questions from anybody?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the superintendent's recommendation for the proposal for the additional funding for the extracurricular activities.
Do I have a second?
I would like to second that.
Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposes? There are none. It's approved.
Thank you.
All right, now item number 7, culture guide for continuous improvement.
It's Mrs. Satterley.
Mr. Ball is on a roll, so I'm going to try to go quickly. This is just this is just an informational item that was supposed to be on the retreat in July that we ended up not being able to have. So just to give you a little background on this document was created by the instructional coaches, our curriculum coordinator, our data coordinator, and myself, to have some district norms in place. We felt like we have never had anything that says, here's how we do business as a district. And so we put this together. It took us all year last year to draft and get this out. But Dr. McDonald, I'm looking at it on my computer, so if you'll just try to...
Yeah.
Oh, Ray Ann, sorry. If you'll try to keep up with me. I'll try not to be all over the place, sorry. You can see it starts with just an introduction to the document. I'm not going to read all that to you. And then there's a table of contents, and the table of contents does what a table of contents does. It tells you where to find things. And you can see it's divided into 3 sections: curriculum, instruction, and assessment. So if you will keep scrolling, Ms. Grubbs, down to page 4. On the curriculum page, there's a belief statement about what, and our coaches crafted all of these belief statements themselves. They didn't Google them and find them on the internet. They came up with these themselves, and then what curriculum documents will look like. And you see there's, under curriculum documents, you see pacing and essential standards, supporting standards, summative assessment, and then vertical alignment. And I won't read all that to you. And then lesson agendas, including critical and academic vocabulary, learning targets, assessments, and mastery and success criteria. And so the next section is on instruction, and you see their belief statement there. This section's a little bit longer. It addresses high yield Tier 1 instructional strategies, which are engagement strategies to keep all students engaged. Differentiation and modifications in Tier 1 instruction, and there you see that those will be data-driven and addressed in multiple ways. And all the sources are linked in the footnotes also. Collaboration. Oftentimes we think of collaboration as a collaboration classroom, which we call co-teaching. So this is collaboration across the board. Like our K-5 teachers have common planning time once a week, plus they have their building level PLC meetings. We are collaborating more within the district with professional learning communities. We have an instruction PLC, we have a leadership PLC, collaborating more with our EL instructors, our RTI instructors, special ed instructors, making sure they're all involved in instruction discussions. I'm trying not to go too fast but not take hours. Co-teaching, there's a lot in here about co-teaching and what that looks like in a classroom that has a general education teacher and a special education teacher. It goes on to talk about the roles and responsibilities and the co-teaching models. And you see, if you scroll down a little bit, Ryan, keep going. And you see under the co-teaching models there, you see the 6 models, and you see the top 4 are bold and italicized, and the one teach, one observe is just struck through because that is not one we want to see utilized very rarely.
Mm-hmm.
And those top 4 are the ones we want to see the majority of the time in those co-teach classrooms.
Okay, so you have those highlighted.
Yes.
Okay.
And then there are hyperlinks throughout, like under co-teach models right there, you see click here for an explanation of each model. That's a hyperlink that will take anyone who clicks on it to a document that has all 6 models and what the models are.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a roles and responsibilities document linked above that talks about what the roles of the general education teacher are, the special education teacher, and what both of them will do. Because in a perfect world, you want to walk into a co-teach classroom and not be able to tell who the general education teacher is, who the content specialist is, and who the strategy specialist is.
Okay.
And we, for the most part, in our district, we are pretty exclusively co-teach. We do have some kids who still require resource time, but we found that we were pulling kids, especially at the secondary level, from reading or math to go to resource reading or math, and they didn't have access to that content specialist. And so we changed that up a few years ago and made sure they had access to both. There's a lot in here about the science of learning and the science of reading. You know, our K-5 teachers have all had training in the language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling. We have a book study going on right now on the book Powerful Teaching. It's all about retrieval practice, spacing, interleaving, and feedback-driven metacognition. I won't go through all of that. A lot of letters stuff in there, a lot of powerful teaching stuff. And then student ownership of data. This is a place where if you keep going, Ray, I'm sorry. That's a long section, sorry. And student ownership of data is a piece that we are going to be working on throughout the year also. And making sure that they know what their data is and where they are and are setting goals for themselves. And then in assessment, you see there's a belief statement, and then there's a section on formative assessment, summative assessment, and data analysis. And then after assessment, you see definitions that anyone would need if they were reading this and they came across a word that they were unsure of. It's in the definition section. Keep Ryan, if you don't mind me, keep going. Sorry. And then in the back there, keep going. There you go. Right here in the back, there are one-pagers that outline our district norms for these processes. So professional learning community, collaborative team meetings. We just, in our instruction PLC last week, went over our protocols for these meetings for each school, and plus deltaed those as a group. They are to have a shared mission, vision, values, goals, focused on learning. They should be standards driven, which is the plan piece. thinking with the end in mind, which is the do, commitment to continuous improvement, which is the study, and growth mindset is the act. So each school is doing something a little differently. Like Tolliver, for instance, they do their plan and do piece through their common planning with their teachers. So they take care of all that planning and doing with standards and learning targets and instructional strategies and assessments. And then study and act is when they get into studying the assessments to make sure the questions are good and studying the data to see where they need to go next with all of their students. And then there are some non-negotiables there. Keep going, Marianne, sorry. Then the next one are interim assessment core values and norms, and we would love for this to be a reality this year. We shall see. And you all can read through all of this on your own. I know you need something pleasurable to read. Keep going, Rayanne. And then walk through observation, core values and norms. Our instruction PLC was supposed to be tomorrow, and that was what we were doing tomorrow, was going through each walkthrough document and plus deltaing those as well. But we had several people who couldn't be there tomorrow for this reason or that reason. I know 2 of us, our youngest go to a daycare that announced today that it's going to be closed the rest of the week. And then we have 3 of our people starting cognitive coaching tomorrow. So we're pushing that to next week, but they're there in the document if you'd like to see those. And then if you keep going, Ryan, sorry. This is where you find, here's that co-teaching, roles and responsibility, and then the co-teaching models is after that. And I think that's where I think it ends after the co-teaching models, yes. And on the co-teaching models, keep going, Ryan, to the very last page, please. Thank you. Keep going. This one. You see we tiered those based on the ones that we want to see the most, and then the one teach, one observe is at the bottom, and you see that at the very, very bottom, Marianne, you see that the planning time required for one teach, one assist, and one teach, one observe are both very low. So. Anybody have any questions?
Have you had a good buy-in from schools on this?
We have 2 principals in
We have 2 principals in the room. I mean, they've done, the PLC protocols are off the ground and running, and we're working on the walkthrough documents. And the curriculum and instruction pieces, we really started those, we've been going with those for quite some time. We've done a lot of work on our curriculum documents over the last 2 years with the new Kentucky academic standards. And
so
they can probably speak more to what they're doing.
So in effect, this is a living document.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay.
I mean, because education changes every day.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so.
That's why when people print it, I'm like, it's not, it loses its effectiveness when you print it, because it could change. You see, I keep a header at the top that says updated on this day, because something might change or a hyperlink might change.
Okay.
I think it's a great document. I just have one question, because I like that was really one that really stuck out, one component that stuck out to me. And that was on page 9, and that's because I'm a true believer of student advocacy. And you have the part where it says student ownership of the data. What does that look like? I'm just trying to get it in my head, what that looks like when you're having them learning how to advocate for themselves with this particular data.
So it looks a little different across schools.
Tolliver,
they utilize the data notebooks pretty heavily within their classrooms. I know Ms. Farmer had wanted to start some student-led, I don't know if you want to talk parent-teacher conferences.
Yeah, I'm totally battling away that. When we had a shutdown that we had student-led conferencing scheduled in the spring of 2020. And so we're just now getting back on track for that. And part of that is our students are going to be keeping portfolios of their work samples, which is much more appropriate than like a data binder or something for our students, and sharing their work with their families periodically. And then those will go on with them. So they'll start them in preschool, and they'll keep their portfolios all the way through, and they'll go with them to Tolliver.
Dr. Murray, did you have anything from Dave?
Yeah, from our standpoint, what we do is more of data chats with students. And we do that with our new 90-minute blocks in math and English. We use part of our time to talk about our iReady data. So iReady is the program we're using this year. For intervention, we've done diagnostics with all students, and we're continuing to use iReady as kind of like a learning loss fix across the board at BATE. So those data chats are happening in their math and in their English classes. And then we also have organized our school into flex groups or advisory periods that we also use for social emotional learning. And one of the things that we do on a monthly basis is to have those data chats with their advisor as well. So that way they're getting data chats with their math teacher, their English teacher, and then from their social emotional learning, homeroom teacher. So they get it from 3 different angles. We're also planning to communicate by mailing home the iReady scores with their report cards, so that those data chats can happen with parents. And we'll have those iReady data chats with parents at teacher conferences as well.
Thank you. I just think that it's very critical. I mean, it's great when kids can, because when they understand it, then they can advocate for themselves. And when I saw that in there, I thought that was definitely thumbs up to have the component in there so that students can really have some true ownership of their data. Because, I mean, you'd be surprised, just at the ones who, they just don't. They know I got an A on this particular project, but they have no understanding of the whole process and the concept. And especially by the time they get to high school and everything's supposed to follow on the transcript. So I'm happy to see it coming up through the district so that by the time they get there, they can be true advocates, of the data.
And just at the school level and at the district level, Tolliver's still utilizing Mastery Connect to track individual standards mastery. And Ms. Kuykendall, our data coordinator, has worked pretty heavily with the instructional coaches to this point, for sure, at Hogsett and BATE, getting some data sheets together for them that have all of their things. I know she's working on some things with Mr. Lumen. We're actually, in place of that instruction POC tomorrow, meeting with Mr. Lumen and Mr. Bode tomorrow to see exactly what they want in their sheet, because she just creates it. She wants the school to be the brains behind it. She just puts it together in a way with all the formulas that it can.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Jerry, you have anything?
No, I just have a random comment I wanted to make. I really appreciate your weekly calls on Sundays. I have them timed now, and it's just kind of nice to hear, what's going on with the school level. So I just wanted to give you a shout out.
5:30 every Sunday.
Yep.
Mr. Terry, you have anything?
No, this is an incredible document. There's a lot of work that went into this.
Yeah.
No, it's very thorough. And if this is something that we can actually implement district-wide, I think we would be in a really good shape. So thank you for putting it together.
All right, very
Thank
good.
your coaches, your instructional coaches in the buildings.
Yeah.
They love their hearts. They were with me for at least 2 hours once a week, all year long, and oftentimes it went into lunch, and we worked while we ate lunch. So they put a lot of work into this document.
Very good. Looks good. A good living document. Keeps us on our toes. Very good. Is that all for item 7?
I believe so.
Okay. Item 8, facilities update.
Okay, we're going to look at just a chart that we have listed. If you could go on and pull that chart up, Ryan. I know I'd earlier said, but let's go on and pull it up so everybody can kind of look at it. You guys have a hard copy at your desk if you need to, since it was just one page. So we, of course, have a district facility plan, and the district facility plan is it's the long-term needs of the district, and so you will see all of the larger pieces listed on that district facility plan. Like, for example, at some point, the district will have to consider BATE Middle School and renovation, a larger renovation of that building. And that's something that is on the horizon for the district, but not in the next 12 months. We also have a lot of places to where we just need to do some updates. I mean, there are places that we need updates. What you're looking at currently is what I would categorize in the maintenance, which means that if we don't tackle these within the next year to 2 years, it could cost us more funds down the road, with the exception of softball concession, but that's a need that the board has discussed over and over for the last couple of years. So it's on there, even though but the majority of these are a repair situation that is really in an immediate need. So I have broke out the immediates in the top 2 charts, and I have some others listed at the bottom. But these are things that we need to either address or start the process this school year, if at all possible. And so the top is a non-bonded issue. So these are areas that we cannot bond. Some of them are small, and some of them are small and we wouldn't have had to bring them to the board, but I thought we would go on and list them since they're things that we're dealing with currently. And so the softball concessions / restrooms we've talked about frequently, we are estimating around 130, but it could come back and be higher. I know that Mr. Dunn is working on a BG1, and we were going to try to have that at the next board meeting so that we can get with an architect on that. We spent, Mr. Dunn and I, a very lengthy amount of time several days ago on the phone with KDE around all of these to figure out what we could bond and could not bond and so forth, and had a long discussion about the softball concessions. The second one is baseball concessions, and I know we've not talked about that as a board at this point, but we have several repairs on baseball concessions that not only are areas that will cause more severe damage down the road if we don't address them, but there's also some safety concerns that need to be repaired. We have guessed at that. Once we get an architect in it, it could cost more than the 40 that's listed. But the reason I listed at that and went on and estimated a price is that I would like to, Ernest and I would like to put those 2 concession stands on this same BG1. Because that way we can get maybe a little bit cheaper deal on the baseball concession repair with an architect. So that's what we're thinking about bringing to you next Monday with that one. We do have some termites that have been found in Gravely, which is a fairly serious situation, and that's the estimate that we have, $15,640 to repair that, and then of course do preventive work moving forward on that. There's going to have to be some significant drilling and so forth, and there's some damage there. The lighting in Gravely is something that's going to have to be addressed immediately for some repairs, and then over the long haul, and you'll see it down in the bottom 2 charts when we get to it for the overall replacement of lighting. But we need some immediate repairs currently that total the $13,250. The elevator at the high school, you will also see at the bottom is a total replacement, which is needed. But that's an immediate repair that we will be needing to get it fixed immediately. We are working on getting an estimate for replacement. So we're holding off just slightly on that because if so we can compare the 2. But I would say the recommendation is going to be that we would have to, repair. That's an immediate need. That's an immediate need.
American Disabilities Act.
But we are waiting on a cost of replacement, and that's listed at the bottom of the chart. So central office pavement, if you have not been to the front parking lots, I know that for these meetings, we park at the back and on the side. I'd just like to ask as you leave, if you don't walk through the front parking lot, to at least do a little U-turn with your car in that parking lot. That's where our taxpayers enter the building, and the pavement is waved, and that's where our handicap ramp is and our handicap spot, and it's a safety hazard. It's a safety hazard. So I just ask that you take a look, but that's something that we need to take care of sooner than later, just like the baseball concession, because it's a safety hazard. We're moving forward with the gates at Tolliver. I just put that on there just so you can know it's a little bit larger amount, but the gates that were installed when Tolliver was renovated are heavy, and they've caused 2.
Yes, 2.
They've had damage twice now. Those gates are not safe, so we want to replace them.
It doesn't serve as any kind of, like the students on the playground, it doesn't stop anything, balls or mainly, most importantly, children from being able to just run under the gate because they're just there. There's nothing that stops anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a safety
Multiple safety.
improvement, and the fact that where the gates, where they come unlatched, and if it does come unlatched, you can't see it. And we've had, you know, those individuals that, I guess one hit it on his bicycle and another hit it with their
The
vehicle.
car.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
So for the, so for 2 safety reasons, we're looking, and we're moving forward with that. That's more of an FYI on the list, but kind of wanted you to see the total of immediate needs. Now, if since we have a couple of new board members, when I have non-bonded listed up there, that means that we cannot bond them, nor pay for those with our restricted facility funds. So, which we have 2 pots of restricted facility funds that run around $300,000 each year, but these repairs do not qualify for those.
For either one of them?
For those funds. So, we, in working with our auditors, when we were working on our audit this year, we talked about that, you know, we were in, and I think I mentioned to everyone that we were in pretty good shape when we talked about going ahead and paying off Wausau. So I felt comfortable to say that we could do these needs. Now in saying that, the softball or baseball may come back. Those are not exact numbers, where the others are pretty close. We have estimates on the rest of them, but those are not exact. So they may be slightly off, but even if they are slightly higher, I think we're still fine, you know, if we landed at 250 to 275 out of general funds. So in saying that, I kind of would want the board to understand that as we create our overall budget, because you'll see the working budget next week, we always want to, because I know that I talked a lot over the last 3 years for those of you that have been around as board members, making sure that we budget what our revenue is going to be, and then we don't budget over. But at this point, our contingency has increased, and we have some funds there, and so we, just like we talked about the prior action item on the sports and the clubs, and we had that extra 50 there, this is an extra 50. I mean, this is extra like that 50. So in saying that, if we're looking at 250,000 to 275,000 for these facility needs, and we just gave 50,000 to our clubs and activities, we need to be mindful that we have just spent 300,000 out of our contingency above our normal budget for this next year. And so we'll want the rest of this year to kind of be mindful of that we've already spent 300,000 extra, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So, Ernest, would you like to add to the non-bonded needs, since that's anything that I maybe missed there on that piece?
No, I think we got it all. I know on the, like on the termites, though, that was the price that so that is the price.
Yeah.
And the elevator repair, the pavement, and the bus gates, I think we hit it all.
Yeah, the pavement's is
Just
not a quote, so it's
Yeah.
an estimate. That could be, it could actually be just 18,000, or it could be 30. We could have variation there. And softball and concession, we're guessing, but the rest of them are actual quotes we have in hand, so we can move forward with. So the bonded, is there any question on the items that we cannot bond?
I don't know, what does that mean?
Okay, bond means basically that we would, I'm so sorry, so if we bond, it basically means we're getting a long loan. So we would get like a 20-year loan on whatever we're doing. In our large projects, like building the school, the Tolliver renovation, the Hogsett renovation, were bonded. And so we owe on those, and we have payments. And I will give you our debt service on Thursday, so you can see what we owe for all of that.
Are any of these eligible to be covered by the ESSER funds?
So so not this top area, not the top. This next that we're fixing to talk about, where we have immediate needs that could be bonded, there's a possibility there. So, other questions about the non-bonded?
Just real quick, because I was looking at the Danville High School elevator repair, almost $5,000 versus a replacement, I guess. Is that what it says?
Yes.
At the bottom, am I looking at that right?
Yes, you are. So we are looking into replacing that elevator completely. we're not going to move forward with that estimate on that repair work until we get a quote on replacement.
Okay, because I was thinking if we spent $5,000.
That's exactly right.
Then we turn around and have to replace the thing, I
Yes.
mean, okay, so,
And
you
this
see where I was
is,
going.
yes, and this is not anything that you're voting on.
Right.
This is for discussion, for you to give us guidance at this time.
Absolutely, so that's what I was saying.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, that's it, you go ahead.
You think if you do replace it, think about it, you get a warranty on it, on the work.
Mhm.
So that's the main thing versus a repair. You might get for 90-day warranty on
And,
the repair, but if you
Yeah.
want to get the whole brand new and get a long-term warranty on it.
yes, and so oftentimes I have an idea and can guess fairly closely on the price of something, and I know Mr. Dunn can as well. But a replacement elevator, we were unsure of, so that's why we were looking at repair. We're getting quotes on repair and replacement, since we're not sure of the exact amount, so.
Get all our alternates.
But we'll let you know as soon as we get, information on the replacement.
Okay, very good.
So things that we can bond, and these are, when I say immediate needs on these, I just kind of want everyone to understand that if Ernest and I started tomorrow on these, we probably wouldn't see work until summer. So these are processes, especially when you bond, that are very lengthy. Like to even start the process for this, before we can start the bond process, we have to do the BG1 process. It would be a 6-month process to even be able to start getting bids to do work. So, however, these are all areas that we need to address. All of these are of equal importance and need to be done, just as soon as the board feels comfortable that we can do this work. You can see that the price tag on HVAC in 3 different areas for the high school, and HVAC, air conditioning and heating for BATE is the completion of 3 units. So for our new board members, we've been slowly working on replacing HVAC units, so the rooftop units at BATE. One was done prior to my arrival, and then we did 6 total units. 3 of the units were completed. 3 of those 6 were not completed. So there are brand new units sitting on top of the building, and they're hooked up to old ductwork and old control units. And so the ductwork, of course, doesn't really matter about the brand, but the control units are a different company and they're older. So we don't want to keep those nice new units hooked up to old controller systems that don't match the units very long. And so they've been that way for a year at this point, and so we want to move forward as quickly as we can to at least finish out the BATE HVAC.
Make everything compatible.
Yes, and anyone that has been to a meeting in the flex room or the library knows that it is very uncomfortable, and the heating and cooling does not work in those 2 rooms. So those 2, out of the 4, those 2 are really the most immediate, but that's $750,000. For that amount, we would need to bond. And so if we're going to bond, we can address the other 2 in the bond. And the larger your bond, the better the interest rate you receive. So if we're going to, we would actually save money by going ahead and doing the one in the choir room, band room, and the foyer area. We would save money. Because if we did 2 bonds a year apart, and the second bond's only for $230,000 or $50,000, you pay about a $20,000 fee when you bond. So you're going to pay that $20,000 a second time, and then the smaller the bond amount, the higher your interest is. So we'll get a lower interest, and we'll save what we have to pay our fiscal agent to do all of the bond work. So it makes financial sense that that's going to be needed. We need to do it in a year to do it now. So my recommendation would be that we need to look at this heating and cooling work and move forward with bonding that work. So
What is our bonding capacity off the top of your head?
and I should have known that off the top of my head, but we were about 6 weeks or 2 months ago around 7 million.
Okay.
So we were fine, and that rate goes up and down regularly, and sometimes it can jump drastically. But before we come back with official on this, I'll have the exact for that particular month.
Thank you.
Okay, very good.
Okay, so does, and this is more of just conversational, but do y'all feel comfortable with us moving forward with paperwork and bringing this back to you officially on this bond for these,
Absolutely.
this heating and cooling?
Go for it.
Perfect. Ernest, you have a thumbs up.
All right.
And so now we see some other needs that, you know, we need to address fairly quickly, but, and I don't have estimates on all of these at this point either, but just making you aware of these. We do need some door replacement at Danville High School. When Ernest and I were, Mr. Dunn and I were on the phone with KDE, we were discussing things, even the KDE, our consultants, like, oh yeah, those doors at the high school are older and probably are, it's probably getting time for replacement. So they even realized that we were probably at that time. So it's just that they're aged. And we're going to need to do some replacement work there. And I know it seems high, but it's a lot of doors. They're specialty doors. So, you know, that we also need to, and these are things we may come back to do in 4 months or 6 months, and you know when we're ready to, but we need to address them soon. So the Swain building, our athletic building that's right here behind the high school. So we have some roofing issues there that we need to work on, and then if you've noticed, if you went by the building, the trim, it needs some attention. We're probably going to need some boards replaced and painting, or possibly wrap with metal, and we can look into both. And and I know that immediately a lot of us, because with our homes we think, well, if we wrapped it with metal it would last longer and maybe be sturdier. We always have to remember when we're talking about our facilities with our school that we're under different guidelines than a private business or home. And so if we thought about metal wrapping, we would fall under very stringent guidelines as to what that would look like. And that oftentimes for a school district is more expensive than the repair of the wood trim and painting. So we'll look into both of those things and get some quotes on what that costs. And then the Swain washroom floor, it's not an area where students are at, so we never have students there, but the floor is a little, it's got a weight to it, so when you walk, you kind of squish a little bit, so, yeah, so it's a little bit of an airy feeling, but it actually is also
Like
maybe 6 to 12 inches above the actual ground.
Yeah.
So
Oh, boy.
it's not, you're not going to fall through something, but we do need to address that. I think that's something we can address fairly inexpensively, so we may want to look at that this year. And then at the bottom, we've talked about the elevator replacement. I mentioned replacing the lighting at Gravely. That's a need, but that's a costly need. So that's going to be $100,000, possibly a little more. But that's something we'll want to be thinking about this year and keep in our conversation and probably address that. Possibly even in July where we move into the next fiscal year and we have a new budget. So that's something we can look at there. And then handrails at the high school. Mr. Dunn can probably talk about that a little more, but that we need some replacement and work there as well.
Yeah, I guess the black plastic coating that's on you know, that people hold as they go up and down, it's worn away in some of the places, so it's kind of there's metal exposed, and it's like it's a hazard for people that are holding the handrails as they're going up and down. And then there's some bolts that our maintenance guys have done a good job of reinforcing those, but over time they're starting to break loose again, and they're just going back and more patchwork during this, you know, right now. And that's on, you know, not so much in the main hallway, but the back hallway, Proctor Street hallway, and then down in our gym area where they go up the stairs, they go up and down both sides. They're starting to become exposed.
And so we don't have an estimate there yet,
No.
but that's something you'll be seeing from us this year to discuss. And then I'm gonna skip the Gore House and come back to that last. Central office roof repair. So we, so it's interesting. So when we moved into this building, in the front part of the building, the roof was 7 to 8 years old, and just the front part, and had a warranty. And so we had some issues here not too long ago. You may have seen on Facebook where Ernest and I were on top of the roof. here. And so through that, in repairing this minor issue that when we were still under warranty, what was found is that there are 3 roofs. Of course, you know, sometimes someone will not replace the roof, they won't tear the old roof, they'll put another one. And so originally we had the flat roof here, or in that area was a flat roof. And so at some point, a second roof was placed on top, and they built up a structure above the flat roof. And when they built up that structure, there are 2 existing roofs on that structure. That structure's wood, and that structure has started to rot. And so so we have repaired the area that was repaired, but the whole that technically 3rd roof that has the warranty, when the roof was replaced, which was before our ownership, and it came with a warranty, they didn't replace that. I guess I almost want to call it a subfloor, but it's not. But you can think of it like a subfloor in your house. That was not replaced, and it's therefore not under that particular warranty. So it is repaired at this point in time, and we're good, but it's something the board needs to be aware of, that there's a possibility that we could have to replace it sooner than later, and it may last a few years. So there is no danger to anyone in the building. It's perfectly safe because we have the original roof still there, which is sturdy and fine. So this is something that's elevated, would you say about a foot above the original roof?
Yeah.
So,
10 to 12 inches. It's not far, you know, it's not a large distance, and it's not really clear why they did it that way.
yeah,
Cheap and fast.
it was odd of how they did it. So these are things that we will be discussing, and the Gore House is the last thing that we have listed up here. And then this is something that the board, and I would like to invite all the board to come take a tour of the Gore House. Like come tour that building and kind of look and see what's there. So there's not any thing that we can do with that building instructionally. Currently, it's being used as storage. The building is not in good shape. The roof is in bad shape, the chimney's in bad shape, the trim is. And so I think that you would just need to, if you could set some time up and let's just take a tour, it would be much easier to see and talk through it as we take a tour of the building. But the board needs to just have some discussion, and maybe that's a one-off agenda item at some point after everyone has taken a tour of the building, to see the building cost us money just sitting there. And so currently it has an old broiler, and the broiler is out at this particular time. It went out at the beginning of summer, and we've just left it, but we will have to repair that broiler before we get into the cold months. So
Are you making a recommendation?
I wish I had a really good recommendation. I would love for each board member to tour the building first.
Okay.
I really do not see that there is anything in the district that we can do with it.
Push it down?
Yeah, well, yes.
I went to it last.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And yeah, I
So,
think the best thing to do is for us to take a tour of it, so you can get our eyes
So they
on,
can see
hands
it.
on, and we make a better informed decision. I
yes.
already got my decision on what I want to do with
So,
it.
and Mr. Ball toured the building with me on Thursday. And so, just to give you an example, the one thing that we did have someone look at the building, when the roofers were here at this building, we asked them to take a look at it. Of course, it wasn't an official quote. There was not, I mean, they were just doing us a nice favor and looking. And at that point, they were talking about how much, Ernest? Like, it was just for the roof, chimney, and trim.
Oh, gosh.
6 figures?
Yes.
Yeah, oh yes,
Yeah, well,
absolutely.
yes.
It was like around, seems like it was 200,000. The roof has asbestos in it, so it'll cost a lot to replace and removal.
And you can see where, like, the wood is deteriorated and rotted, and so they'd have to cut that out and reinforce it. And,
The strongest thing over there are the 4 columns.
yes.
What would be the reason for wanting to keep it, or a reason for wanting to keep it?
Right.
So the educators in this district, the leadership in this district, we do not have any educational purpose for keeping that building. The only thing that I can think of, some individuals wanting to keep it for historical purposes. But
It's an expensive storage unit. Right?
it's an extremely expensive storage unit, and to be honest with you, it is not a good storage unit.
Right.
If you've been, it's small doors. The upstairs is very, because of when it was built, the stairs are very narrow and steep, so it's hard to put anything upstairs. And if anybody's been in the building, the upstairs is not one level floor. So you'll go into a room and you may go up 2 steps, and you're in that room, and on the other side of that room, you may step down 1 step. And then, so it's, and sometimes you'll go down 3 or 4 steps, and the door's not a full height, so you will lean down to go down 2 steps into another room. So it's not convenient for storage either. We just use it for that because it's there, and we have to keep it anyway. So it's a drain for the district.
Why don't we set up, all you all will set up a time that we can go in and visit all together. Now, of course, you may not have to be because you're down
We
there.
can do it in the evening though.
Yeah, we can do it in the
Okay, do it
evening.
evening, we'll do
Yep.
that. You set up a time.
And
We'll
it's
do-
just no more than 2 at a time, and so I can just get with each of you and no more than 2 at a time, and we'll take it to the building, and then we can have a conversation about just that.
Informed
building.
discussion on it, yeah, we'll do
Well,
that.
then I'll have to go by myself,
No, sir.
because I'm 2 people.
No, you ain't getting away with that, no, sir. No, sir, you're not getting away with that.
The last thing I'll say about the Liz is I want to say thank you for your patience and sitting, through me talking about all these different aspects. And it sounds like a lot because I went through even some things that were very minor, but I just wanted you as a board to be aware of kind of all the things we were looking at and to know that for a district our size and the amount of land and the amount of square footage we have in our buildings, this is a very good list. This is not massive compared to the square footage that we have in our district. Tolliver is in extremely good shape. Of course, it's new. Hogs, it's new. The high school and they have been well maintained, and so, and we have some other things that are smaller, but those are the immediate repair or replacement needs that we need to do for either it'll cost us more down the road if we don't take care of it now, or it's a safety issue we need to take care of.
And any of those safety issues, we need to look at immediately.
Yeah, we do.
And
Let's,
so we can work on them.
we'll meet informally right after the meeting, just come with what's convenient for all of us to do that. We'll take the time to do it now.
You're just talking about the schedule to tour.
You too, yeah.
Yeah, everyone can just get with me individually and I'll set up a
And
time.
we'll do that.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
When's the Swain building?
Oh, that, and when you actually walk to your car, we'll look and I'll show you, but right behind the high school, we have, it's called, a lot of people call it the old women's gym. So originally this building, the building that set where the high school does before the high school was built, this was all a women's college years ago when the center took it over, and that was the gym. So it's the large brick building behind the high school.
But what's it used for?
So athletics.
Are they actually using it?
Yep, and on Thursday I'll be glad to give you a tour of that building.
Sounds good.
All right, that is all we have for item number 8. Number 9 is COVID response plan. Dr. McDonald?
Okay, so as you know, we've had a plan in place since this summer before we started school, and our legislators had a special they came together for a special session last week. They convened that at the end of this week and they passed Senate Bill 1. I'm sure that you've seen some of the pieces on that on the news, but one piece is that we have to resubmit our COVID plan. And we have 5 days to do that, so I'll have to submit a plan by Friday. And under Senate Bill 1, the new law, the board has to approve that plan. So what you're seeing is a couple of pieces that were added based on that new law that was out. And then the rest of it is exactly what we've been doing. So I would like to point out what I have added that's based on the law. So the first page, which looks new, it's just a bulleted list of things that we're doing in our plan. Everything we are already doing, and you have seen in some way, form, or fashion in the communication, with the exception of 3 bullets on this page. And so I should have made it easy and put them at the top, and I apologize I did not. 1, 2, 3. So the 6th, 7th, and 8th bullet. The wording in those bullets matches the law exactly. And so the first bullet says that the ISD may temporarily assign students at the school, grade, classroom, or student group level to remote instruction due to significant absences of students or staff related to COVID-19 until December 31st, 2021. I went on and left the date in there because that expires then, and then I know that our legislators are going to readdress this when they reconvene for the General Assembly after the holidays. The next bullet also is wording straight from that new law. Students temporarily assigned to remote instruction shall receive at least the minimum daily instruction required pursuant to KRS 158.060, which shall include the Kentucky Academic Standards. We are doing this already and already have a plan in place and have been doing this since school started. And then the next bullet, the Board of Education on 9/13/21 has authorized the decision to temporarily assign students to remote instruction to the discretion of the superintendent. Temporary assignment to remote instruction shall be no longer than is necessary to alleviate student and staff absences due to COVID-19. Now, I know that you've not voted. This is draft, remember. But I am asking you to approve this tonight, because I do have to send it to KDE. And the reason I have that piece in there is because the law placed the ability to quarantine like one class or to shut down a school or the district in the hands of the board, but we have to have a 24-hour notice to do a special called board meeting. And so if we have COVID and we need to send students home, we don't have the time to call a special call meeting, wait 24 hours and still have students or, faculty in the classroom if someone needs to be quarantined for COVID. So I'm asking you, and it does state in the law that you can give me the authority to do that when necessary. So I'm asking to put that piece in there. Those 3 bullets are the only thing that is different than what we're already doing. If you'll notice the page 2, continued safety precautions, that went out in a communication before school started. The health self-assessments that we ask families and staff to do before they come to work. We had that actually not just in communications before school started, but we had that all last year also and asked for that. So that's not a change. Then you'll also see the 2 flow charts. And so there's one flow chart that you have not seen yet. So here is the color-coded metrics. We've had that out since school started, and we've been following that. The one thing that I'll point out, if you'll hold right here, Rand, the one thing I'll point out on the color-coded chart is Senate Bill 1 also, it pulled back the mask mandate. And so on our color-coded chart, masks are required in orange, red, and purple. In yellow means that we have less than 10 cases per 100,000. So for Danville, that's somewhere, I'm thinking around 6 or 7 in the whole entire county cases. So on that one, we have masks recommended for unvaccinated staff and students. So I just wanted to point that out because that may be something that the board wants to think differently on. We've been in red for a while, and I think we're going to be in red for a lot longer. And then green is the same thing, recommended. So that's what, as leadership in the district, we worked together to create this before school started. So I will open it up to the board to make sure you're comfortable with that one piece of it. That's what we've been working under.
Now, in the past, I've been going over the expenses representing the board. And one thing I will say, and Bull, she has on continued safety precautions. There will be increased cleaning and sanitizing of building and school property. A lot of money was spent on that to keep us safe as we are. So that has been done. This Board of Education staff has been very proactive in that. So we're ahead of the power curve on that. That's all I have to say.
I'm okay with this if you're okay with it. I mean, as far as as long as we're in orange, red, and purple, I mean, masks should be required.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
And I'm almost wanting to say they just should be, period, they should just be required until we can get, from under what we're dealing with at this very moment. And maybe, I don't know if it could be scripted, I don't know how to word it, but, I mean, I would like to, I just think we should be in mass, period, until, the data says that we should not be, and at that time, I don't know that.
Yeah,
I would like to put in the language that then, as superintendent, that's something that you can roll back.
yeah. So, and so I guess in thinking about the green through the purple, and of course that follows the state level data for our county. And so, if we're in yellow, that means that in Boyle County, we have less than 10 cases per 100,000. So even if, so that's gonna be somewhere, that could be as little as 1 case to maybe 7 cases or so, because it's based on 100,000. Of course, we don't have 100,000. And then, of course, green is less than 1, which probably means we either have 0 or 1 case in the county. So I'm comfortable, and we'll put, you know, whatever the board would like me to put in this. I guess our thoughts as administrators were, if we're in yellow, we have less than 6 cases in the entire county and could possibly just have 1. So we, I guess as leadership, when we worked on this, thought at that point, we're over some hump because we don't have any cases in the county. And that's a 7-day rolling average too. It's not just like 1 day. So it's not like, oh, 1 day we had a low number of cases. That's a 7-day average. So do y'all feel comfortable with yellow being recommended only, or do you want masks under yellow? And I guess I should ask the same question for green, even though green is 0.
I'm okay with green.
You're okay with green?
And yellow is only for unvaccinated students and stuff.
So it is, well, and it actually says it's recommended for unvaccinated.
Right.
We could say required for unvaccinated, or you could, I'm open to the wording on yellow, whatever the board would like me to put.
I think put in the principals.
Well,
Do you want
the principals can weigh in. They were in the conversation early, but things have changed since we created the document in July, so.
I guess that's what I was saying, I mean,
Yeah.
this new
How do you all feel?
Delta variant, do you think we should do like this, or should we require in the yellow?
Okay, so yellow says it's required. for
It's recommended.
unvaccinated,
It
recommended?
says
Recommended.
recommended in yellow.
For unvaccinated.
Right.
Yes,
But I think the question is, do you want to leave it recommended
Or
or
put
required
required.
for unvaccinated?
I know that Dr. Murray has a complicated situation because he has students that are vaccinated and unvaccinated. And for me, all
You
of mine
don't,
are
right.
unvaccinated.
Right.
I'll be honest, like, at this point, yellow seems so far away, I can't even. But I don't want to get to a point where I'm saying, this week you have to wear masks, next week you don't.
Right.
Because my students are so young that they're in the habit of wearing them. So I would be worried about that. I wouldn't want to be in a situation where we were saying, this week you don't have to wear masks, and then bounce back, and it's like quick, you know, like.
And I would say that, like, contact tracing is a nightmare, that is extremely hard to manage. And the only thing that seems to help with contact tracing is wearing masks. So even if we are down in that yellow range, and you're talking about 1 student that becomes positive in a classroom, and if they're unmasked, then that means that whole classroom is largely going to be quarantined with 1 case. So if we're looking at the safety of our students, we're looking at trying to keep our school open for as long as possible with our students in the classroom as much as they possibly can. I mean, I think that masking is the thing to do.
Should be required rather than recommended.
And then also, like, the recommended thing for, you know, if we're talking about recommended versus, it says for unvaccinated. So from a Bay Middle School perspective, it's going to be really hard for me to enforce masking for only unvaccinated students. So if we're going to put masking required for any students, from my perspective at middle school level, it's gonna be unenforceable unless it's masking for everything.
And that's the same for the high school, because even though they qualify for a vaccination, we
Right.
do not have a large percentage at the high school vaccinated. So my suggestion would be that if the board wanted to keep the language as is, I'm fine with that, or I would suggest pull the language from orange back down to yellow and use the same language in orange, because it
That's
is,
what I was gonna say.
I would suggest the same thing.
And I tell you, it's because I'm just telling, I mean, just the news this morning, I mean, going to work, it was, I hadn't been watching it a whole lot, but it got my attention this morning, and to hear, the chief of the hospital say that they're full of, the hospital is full of COVID cases. I mean, they're making makeshift units. And then his very next statement was, the majority of the COVID victims are school teachers. That's just facts.
Unvaccinated school teachers.
And it is, but it blows my mind. And if whatever we can do, I just think it behooves us to protect our students as well as our adults in our buildings that come in to work with our kids. And so, yes, I would like to see the red go, the language of the red go to
an
the,
orange.
No,
I mean, the orange go to the yellow.
Okay,
yes.
so I'll
Yeah.
make that correction
Yeah.
on this document. I want to talk you through the next two documents
Mhm.
quickly too before we finalize. So the next document is COVID response, and this may be, this is an internal document. This is not a document that we released, and we will not release this,
Mhm.
not because we're trying to be transparent, but this is just not something that would help for families. It can be confusing. There's a lot of acronyms, but basically all this is our response team and who does what to contact trace. So this is just what we follow for contact tracing. So at the top, Ron's the first person that's contacted, and then boom, we spread out from there, and we're collecting seating charts, and everybody's involved, and so all this is how we contact trace. It's not something that we ever intended to necessarily put out there, because it doesn't help anybody to know that information, but I need that to go to KVE. So that's why it's in the document.
Mm-hmm.
The next one's actually the one I think that's helpful for families and the community and so forth. And we have released this one. We released this, I think it was last week's newsletter. We have another version of this chart as well that we've been using internally since the first day of school. And it has in it how we code students. So if a student's quarantined versus positive, how we code them in Infinite Campus. And it's just not that no one outside of the school needs that necessarily. It's just how we code things in our management system. And so this is just a family-friendly, community-friendly version of that document where we took out the coding and so forth. And we released that this past Wednesday, and there's not any change to what we released last week. So these are the documents that I will send to KVE, but I do need approval, and whoever makes a motion, if you make a motion, and I hope you do, because we legally have to have this to KDE by Friday, I just need the person to make the statement that we want the masking requirement under yellow to reflect the same language as orange, and I'll make that change before I submit it to KDE. And I will Wednesday in all of our communications put this out there for our community to see.
We'll entertain a motion with the changes that we just spoke about.
I will, do you want to go ahead?
No, ma'am.
I want to make a motion to approve as shown with the amendment of changing what's in yellow to what's in orange to match.
What's in orange to
Or what's in orange to yellow to match, sorry.
Thank you.
We'll have a motion on the floor. Do I get a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
All proposals? None? All right. It is approved.
Thank you.
Now we'll go to item 10, consent agenda.
So this is everything on this consent agenda is something that we do every year. So where we had talked earlier about the difference between MOA, MOU, and contract, you'll see a mix-up, or I guess a mashup, I should say, of MOAs and MOUs. These are just organizations that we work with every year. New Vista provides services for our students, and we provide them just a location in the building. You will see contracts for the Beacon and our Frisky groups, and so they're just the exact same ones we do every year. So these are not for approval tonight. These will be on our consent agenda next week, so you can look back at any of those individual ones that you would like through the week. And just also as an FYI, every contract, MOU or MOA that we receive goes to Vince. I shoot it to Vince and he sends me back a thumbs up, it looks good, or it's okay.
Okay.
So he does see any of those first.
All right, very good. Item 11, I'd like to acknowledge our newest member, Mrs. Jennifer Cusateri, to our board. Some people name there. You are now up to full complement, and we appreciate that. Now I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make go ahead,
I make a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn our meeting.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded, we will adjourn. All in favor say aye.
All right?
Bye.
Bye.